discuss one case of secondary osteoporosis. So let's start. So we had this lady, 67-year-old woman, who came with end-stage CKD on hemodialysis since the last 10 years. She presented with acute back pain since the last few weeks. She had menopause at 50 years, so we ruled out, it's not a premature menopause in her case. At the age of 62, she had diagnosed a case as a case of tertiary hyperparathyroidism. Her calcium levels were high and the PTH was high. She needed a surgery for that. She had a subtotal parathyroidectomy. She had no family history of fragility fractures, no past history of falls or fractures. She was referred from the spine doctor with a DEXA scan finding. So on evaluation, these were her lab parameters. So her creatinine was high, calcium was low normal, phosphate was normal. If you look at her MRI, you could see there's a L5 compression fracture over here. Her DEXA scan revealed that there was osteoporosis. The scores were low, all T scores were low. Now coming on to her medication history, we saw that she was on a phosphate restricted diet. She was on a vitamin D replacement. We had extensive discussion today with Shashank Joshi sir on this topic. A low dose of vitamin D, 400 units per day. She was taking the calcium, like the common shell cal tablet, which was elemental calcium of 500 milligram. Other than that, she was taking calcium acetate as a phosphate binder, no active vitamin D, no calcium mimetics, or no bone targeting therapy. So our diagnosis at this point of time was she had CKD, a recent L5 fracture. She had CKD related mineral bone disorder, also commonly called as renal osteodystrophy. Now our dilemma is, how do we go ahead? What do we do next? So the main challenge is it a high bone turnover versus a low bone turnover? Our entire treatment would change depending on this. So a low bone turnover is also called as adynamic bone disease versus a high bone turnover. So what did we do? We asked for the bone markers. So we got some of them. So the vitamin D levels were on the insufficiency zone. The PTH was on the low normal. The bone specific alkaline phosphatase, which is a bone formation marker, was towards the lower side. The CTX, which is a bone resorption marker, was high. But this, remember, is excreted by the kidney. So, in CKD, these values would be high. So, because the PTH was low normal, the bone specific alkaline phosphatase are low normal, what we we concluded this was more a case of favoring adynamic bone disease. So we optimized the calcium, the diet plus oral calcium, we kept it around 1000 milligram daily. Vitamin D, initially we gave a small loading dose followed by a maintenance dose of 400 units per day. And after a couple of months, we started on teriparatide. We gave that for 2 years. We monitored for complications of teriparatide, including hypercalcemia, because she's had tertiary hyperparathyroidism previously, hyperuricemia, there was no hyperphosphatemia. So all these complications, we were aware of, we monitored it, and she went uneventfully. How was her progress? So over the next 2.5 years, her PTH levels did not change. The bone specific alkaline phosphatase initially went up a bit and then came down. The DEXA at 2 years showed reasonable improvement. So coming on to the discussion, the osteoporosis in CKD is related to multiple factors, including the elevated FGF23, which is one of the recent hormones, which, what does it do? It reduces the formation of active vitamin D. So it reduces the formation of calcitriol. The high phosphate level stimulates PTH. The low vitamin active D, this increases the level of PTH. The low calcium also increases the level of PTH. So in most of the cases, you will get a high PTH state. Now what happens next? You need to decide how you will treat the patient. So there are chiefly around 3 to 4 categories. You have a high bone turnover condition, which is also called as osteitis fibrosa cystica. This is secondary to the high PTH levels. The second what you have is a low bone turnover. This is in fact of late emerging to be a larger proportion of patients. This is linked to oversuppression of PTH. Third, you would have a mixed condition. And then fourth, you also have a condition called as osteomalacia, where you have a mineralization defect. So if you look at the bone turnover markers, you have the bone formation markers, and you need to see which of them are abnormal because of CKD. So the renal excretion is mainly by the osteocalcin. All the others are not affected. So you could use the bone specific alkaline phosphatase in CKD patients. Among the bone resorption markers, the TRAP and the bones, and the pyridine, these are the tartaric acid resid. The TRAP is not affected, but the DPD also is the other one that we use, or the dipolidine in research where you use, they are usually affected. The CTX, which is another one that we use commercially, like most of the patients where you look for compliance of bisphosphonates, where you look at CTX, the values would be high just because of CKD, because it is excreted by the kidney. So if you have to simplify the diagnosis of high versus low bone turnover, this is a preferred management. You look at serial monitoring of the patients. You first look at the PTH. PTH is an indirect marker of bone turnover. If the PTH levels are significantly high, above 500 to 600, it indicates a high bone turnover state or a mixed state. If the values are low, especially in a dialysis patient, this indicates that it's an low bone turnover or an adynamic bone disease. However, it may vary from person to person. If the PTH is indeterminate or it is intermediate, you look at the bone specific alkaline phosphatase level. A high level again indicates a high bone turnover, and you are ruling out adynamic bone disease. If the bone specific alkaline phosphatase also is low, it is more or less consistent with adynamic bone disease. In few research centers, they can even go ahead with the bone biopsy. This is done rarely. It gives a good information. It's the gold standard for your turnover, mineralization, bone volume, and even the microarchitecture. But it's invasive, time consuming, well tolerated, required in complex cases. So in my practice, like during my DM days at SGPGI, we would occasionally do it, and we had to send it all the way to Sudhakar Rao's team, at Detroit. So we do it very rarely. What we look in this is the tissue, mineralization, and the volume. So that by tissue we mean the bone turnover rates. A high bone turnover rate means it would be your high PTH, that is your osteitis fibrosica, or a mixed uremic osteodystrophy. If the bone turnover rates are low, so you do this by labeling it with tetracycline, and you see how the tetracycline is moving. If it's low, it means an adynamic bone disease. You also look at mineralization defect. Both these conditions, the mineralization or the calcification of the osteoid is normal. If it is abnormal, it indicates osteomalacia. So if you look at it on a 3D graph, it's like this. On the x-axis, you have the turnover. So in the turnover, if you see, the adynamic bone disease has a low turnover. A high turnover is seen in when the PTH is high, or when you have, osteitis fibrosica. Now on the y-axis, if you see, here you see the normal mineralization is seen in both these two conditions. If the mineralization is abnormal, then it is osteomalacia. So osteomalacia is when you're looking at abnormal mineralization. If you're looking at the bone volume, which is this axis, adynamic bone disease has low bone volume, your osteitis fibrosica has high bone volume. So this is the image of the bone biopsy that you do. This is how the normal bone looks like. The osteophytes are seen clearly. In adynamic bone disease, the osteophytes are reduced, the osteoid is reduced. In osteitis fibrosa, the osteophytes are increased in number. In osteomalacia, there is lack of calcification of the osteoid. So in terms of management, this Dr. Shashank Joshi sir alluded earlier that you need adequate calcium in a diet. Most of our diet is having low calcium. Because of CKD, you're worried of hyperphosphatemia, so already you tell the patient to have a low phosphorus diet. Physical therapy is very important. Weight training improves both muscle and bone strength. You need to prevent falls. If a person with osteoporosis never falls, he is unlikely to have a fracture. So balance training is very important. In terms of correction of the biochemical abnormalities, you're looking at three things here: correcting the calcium, correcting the phosphorus, and correcting the PTH. So for phosphorus, what do? You need a low phosphorus diet to get the phosphorus back to normal. Avoid phosphate-rich sources. Have a non-calcium based phosphate binders. Prefer sevelamer over calcium-based binders like calcium carbonate or calcium acetate. This improves bone formation rate. Now in terms of the other biochemical abnormality, calcium. Excessive calcium can actually be harmful in all stages of CKD. So a good dietary calcium intake would be around 100 milligram per day. But this, like we said, if you're taking it through milk, it would be amounting to almost 1 liter of milk per day, which is practically not possible. You prefer non-milk based supports. Why? Because milk has a huge amount of phosphorus, and in CKD patients you need a low phosphorus diet. So if your diet is not sufficient, you could add additional calcium tablets. But if you have a good source of diet, like in US how they have, in UK you have fortified milk, fortified bread, then you do not need additional calcium. If your calcium intake increases and the patient already has a high phosphorus, you are increasing the risk of vascular calcification. The third biochemical parameter is your PTH. To get it down, you have calcium mimetic agent like cinacalcet. This increases the sensitivity of a calcium sensing receptor. It would reduce your PTH. So you use this in the high bone turnover stage. You don't want to use it in an adynamic bone disease because there it would worsen the case. It improves the bone mineral density, improves bone histology. You remember, if the PTH remains elevated, there are trials to show it reduces fracture. Even the evolved trial, it showed that in addition to reducing fracture, it reduces FGF23 and also had cardiovascular benefit. Now coming on to the vitamin D, we had a long discussion here with Shashank Joshi sir that the 25-hydroxy vitamin D and 1,25-hydroxy vitamin D have a very important role in bone metabolism. We need to avoid vitamin D deficiency because that would increase the PTH and that would cause secondary hyperparathyroidism. But what is the optimum level of your 25-hydroxy vitamin D? That's still debatable. What is the optimum level of 125 vitamin D? That's still unknown and debatable. So you need to replace it. What about bisphosphonates? So all bisphosphonates are cleared by kidney. So in CKD, their values would be quite high and they are long-term drugs. They stay in the bone for almost years together. So the IV bisphosphonates, zoledronate, is contraindicated if your creatinine clearance is below 35, and the oral bisphosphonates are contraindicated if your creatinine clearance is below 30. So a huge chunk of CKD patients, stage 4 and stage 5, will not be able to use this. There are also safety concerns in adynamic bone disease because you're shutting off their anabolism also, and nephrotoxicity also is reported. Coming on to denosumab, this is one, in CKD this has been studied. You could prefer using it, but always rule out adynamic bone disease. In adynamic bone disease, if you use denosumab, you would further reduce the bone anabolism. It is cleared not by the kidney, it's cleared by the reticuloendothelial system. So there's no restriction if the creatinine clearance is below 35, but the actual RCT and the trials have a very few patients that are in this group, CKD stage 5 dialysis dependent. You have very small studies which have included. Now the safety concerns are same. You are worried in adynamic bone disease and it's a very potent drug. It can rapidly shift your calcium into the bone. So there's a risk of hypocalcemia in CKD patients. What about the last one, teriparatide? It's a preferred agent in adynamic bone disease where intermittent PTH stimulates mainly your trabecular bone more than the cortical bone, and in dialysis dependent patients it's shown to improve both the lumbar spine and the femoral neck bone mineral density. So to conclude, the CKD, there are multiple factors like sir alluded. Hypogonadism is quite common, poor nutritional status is common, you have systemic illness like diabetes, you have polypharmacy, people may be taking diuretics which can cause calcium loss, you can have other drugs, you can also have metabolic acidosis. So lots of factors are present. You have to treat the patient as a whole. The simplest way is to look at your bone turnover status. If it's a low bone turnover status, it more or less favors adynamic bone disease. You could consider teriparatide. If it's a high bone turnover, then your PTH would be high, your bone specific alkaline phosphatase would be high. There you could consider denosumab. Again, like sir earlier mentioned that you always need to have an exit plan when you're starting denosumab. So here it gets tricky because if you're giving denosumab and you need an exit plan, usually the way out is zoledronate. So nobody has actually looked into this. So few centers like the Mass General Hospital at Boston, what they do is in CKD patients, if they're giving denosumab for the exit, after 6 months, they give a low dose of zoledronate, maybe a 2 milligram of zoledronate, so they can get out of this. So that's it. Thank you.